Hi friends, my name is Sky. I'm 17. I've never had to pay to fly somewhere on a plane, and I'll never have to. I can fly to any place in the world for free. How am I able to do that? You will find out when you hear my story. When my mom was pregnant with me, my parents were living in Africa because my dad was working there. My mom wanted to give birth in her home country. She decided to go back home a month before her due date. My dad would take some time off from work and join her there 2 weeks later. You might not know this, but the airline companies have a rule. You can't get on a plane if you're over 36 weeks pregnant. My mom was 35 weeks or 8 months pregnant at the time, so she was able to get on her flight without any issues. The plane took off at 6 a.m. At first, everything was going smoothly. At some point, my mom went to the restroom. There, she realized that she had some light bleeding. Of course, she panicked. She got out of the restroom and told a flight attendant about it. There were no signs of her going into labor yet, but my mom was really worried that something might happen to the baby, that is, to me. The chief flight attendant made an announcement just in case. One of our passengers is 8 months pregnant. She is having some issues. Is anyone here a doctor or a nurse? She asked. When no one answered, they figured there was no health worker on board. Soon enough, their fears came true. My mom called the chief flight attendant and told her the contractions had started. That meant that she would soon be going into labor. So I had decided to come into this world a month earlier. Thankfully, the flight crew training included instructions on what to do in circumstances such as this one. They started to prepare in accordance with their instructions right away. You know, at the front part of the plane is the first class section. It's the most luxurious section of the plane, and passengers pay a lot of money to sit there. One of the most important features of the first class seats is that they can recline up to 180 degrees. That means each seat over there can be turned into a bed. Even though there were some signs, it wasn't quite certain that labor was about to begin, but the cabin crew still had to take some precautions. They cleared the first class section, transferring those passengers to the other part of the plane. Some of them made a fuss about it, but they had no choice because those were the rules. Then they reclined one of the seats and laid my mother down. After a while, the captain came over. "We are currently above the ocean. We will be able to land in 5 hours. There are no health professionals on board. I know it's not up to you, but it would be great if you could hang on until we land," he said. My mom smiled. "I might be able to hang on, but I don't think the little girl inside can do it because she is incredibly active right now. If you ask me, she will soon want to come out," she said. As it happened, in less than an hour, my mom's water broke, which was the most important sign that labor had begun. The flight attendants were rushing back and forth to and from first class. One of the passengers got worried that something was wrong with the plane. She called a flight attendant and asked what was going on. The attendant told her that a passenger was about to give birth at the front of the plane. She asked, "Is there a doctor with her?" When she was told that there wasn't, she said, "Take me to her. I'm a gynecologist." Apparently, she was sleeping when the announcement was made. That's why she didn't know about it. This, of course, was a great surprise, but do you know what the real miracle was? This doctor was volunteering in Africa, teaching people in rural areas how to help women go through labor without medical supplies. Needless to say, this was exactly what my mom needed at that moment. When the doctor introduced herself, my mom couldn't hold back her tears because she was so scared something might happen to the baby, that is, to me. She was really relieved to hear that there was a medical specialist on board. After examining my mom briefly, the doctor announced that labor had begun. Just like in the movies, she asked the cabin crew for stuff like hot water and a hot towel. I don't know why these things are needed during labor, but if any of you do, please let me know in the comments. I was born exactly 2 minutes later as the plane was flying at 30,000 feet. My mom always tells me, "You never made me suffer during labor. I just pushed once and there you were." The flight crew was deeply relieved when they found out that there were no complications during my birth. The captain made another announcement letting everyone know about it. "We have a new passenger on board. Congratulations to both the baby and her mom," he said. Everyone was so happy. They clapped and cheered for a long time. The cabin crew offered champagne to the passengers. Even though I was born 5 weeks early, I was a pretty healthy baby. My mom wanted to name me after the doctor, but the doctor said, "Can I confess something? I never liked my own name," and asked if my mom would name me Sky instead. When the plane landed, there was an ambulance waiting for me and my mom. They immediately took us to the hospital. After a series of tests, they saw that there was nothing wrong with us. Since I was born on a plane rather than in a hospital, it was the Civil Aviation Authority that gave me my birth certificate. The certificate says born aboard a plane at 30,000 feet as the place of birth, but my current passport says place of birth, the ocean, because a plane birth is very rare and it doesn't exist as an official category. So how come I can now fly around for free? It's time to tell you that part of the story. First of all, let me break it to you. It's not true that people born aboard a plane get a lifetime pass for free flights. That's a myth. In the past, some airline companies did give presents to babies born on their planes, but these consisted of a limited number of tickets. As far as I know, no one else was given an unlimited lifetime flight pass other than me. You may ask, what's so special about you? It's just luck, really. This man you see on the screen is the general manager of the company that owns the plane on which I was born. He is an incredibly nice person. He calls me on my birthday every year without exception. This lovely general manager and his wife weren't able to conceive for a long time. They were going through treatments for years, but nothing was working. Thankfully, his wife finally got pregnant. The rest is really interesting. This woman and my mom gave birth at the same time, down to the minute. So their daughter was born in the hospital and me on the plane at the same moment. The man was very moved by this when he found out. It can't just be a coincidence that a baby was born aboard one of our planes at the exact same time as my daughter. This is definitely a small miracle. I can't just ignore that. I want to give the baby from the plane a lifetime flight pass. But they decided to keep it a secret to prevent it from becoming part of the company policy. Otherwise, they would have to give the same present for every in-flight birth. If you noticed, I didn't say the name of the airline because they made me sign a non-disclosure agreement. You're probably curious about how much I've been taking advantage of this incredible opportunity. It wasn't much use to me when I was younger. I wasn't able to travel on my own at that age. I had to be accompanied by at least one of my parents. Since they didn't have access to free tickets, they had to pay for flights. However, since last year, I've started to fly by myself, and this has completely changed my life. We played a game to make my first solo flight unforgettable. My mom got me a globe. They blindfolded me. My dad spun the globe, and I stopped it by putting my finger on a random spot. Obviously, I was so curious to see what I chose. When I opened my eyes, I was thrilled. The spot I pointed to was Denmark, and this was one of the countries I wanted to see the most. This is how I ended up flying to Copenhagen on the first free flight I took on my own. So far, apart from Copenhagen, I've only been able to travel by myself once more. That was a domestic flight. I went to visit my grandmother for her 75th birthday and came back the same night. It made me so happy to be able to make my grandmother's day. I'm already planning the trips I'm going to take in the future. I made a list of places I want to see the most. Of course, it's only my flight that is free. I have to pay for everything else. I need to have some money in my pocket, even if I'm staying at the cheapest places possible. This is why I'm always saving part of my allowance. Next year, I will go to Japan. If I have any money left, I also want to go to Cuba. Every birth story is special, but mine is truly amazing. I wanted to share it because I thought you might find it interesting. I hope you liked it. Thanks for listening to me. If you like stories like this, you can subscribe to this channel now. That way you will know when new videos come out. Bye!
Hi everyone, I'm Ezra. Let me introduce you to Eddie. Eddie is my ex-girlfriend. I used to be in love with her, but unfortunately she let me down. Let me tell you the whole story from the beginning. I started going to my current school last year. Eddie was on the swimming team. The first time I saw her was at an inter-school swimming competition. She was the most beautiful girl on the team. That was the day I found myself falling head over heels for her. Every morning when I woke up, I was telling myself, I will see Eddie again today. I was spending a long time getting ready in front of the mirror. Earlier, I didn't care much about my clothes. But now I was thinking long and hard about what to wear each day. Even though my family is middle class, I have a lot of clothes to choose from. I owe this to my dad's wonderful boss. My dad is a personal driver. His boss, Mr. Kit, had a son who was 2 years older than me. He loved extreme sports. Unfortunately, he had a terrible accident while rock climbing and passed away. Mr. Kit had lost his wife a few years earlier. After losing his only son, in addition to his wife, he became very depressed. At that time, Mr. Kit used to invite me to his house quite often. We used to have these long chats. After he overcame his depression, he said, "Ezra, the way you think reminds me so much of my son. I feel as if I'm talking to him. It feels really good to spend time with you. I want to give you a scholarship for your education. After you finish college, you can work for my company." I was really happy to hear this. Mr. Kit went on, saying, "I only have one favor to ask of you. Can I send my son's clothes over to your house? I'm going to ask you to wear his clothes when you come to see me. I'd be very happy if you could do that for me." I gladly accepted. That's why I have a lot of clothes. I used to only care about what I was wearing when I was going over to Mr. Kit's house. But now, every morning, I was getting ready for my crush, Eddie. My dad would drop me off at school in the mornings. Then he would pick up Mr. Kit and take him to his office. When my dad noticed I was dressing differently, he started to make fun of me. He'd say, "Son, you look like you own this car now. Don't be surprised if I start calling you Mr. Ezra." I would say, "Dad, please don't tease me." And he'd say, "I'm not kidding. You really do look cool in these clothes." Although I left home every day thinking, I will introduce myself to Eddie today, I couldn't bring myself to do it, and I was starting to lose hope. Finally, my chance came when I was least expecting it. I was eating lunch at the cafeteria. Someone came to my table and asked, "Is this seat taken?" When I looked up, it was Eddie. She took me by surprise and I said, "No, it's totally not taken." Eddie sat down smiling. She held out her hand and said, "I'm Eddie." I wanted to say, "I know, and I love you and your name too." But of course, I couldn't. I held out my hand and said, "I'm Ezra." I couldn't take my eyes off of Eddie during lunch. She was even prettier up close. I was extremely happy now that she was aware of my existence. The next day at lunch, I looked for Eddie, but I couldn't find her. Just as I was leaving the cafeteria to go to class, I heard her voice, "Ezra." When I turned to look, she was standing right in front of me. Before I could say anything, she said, "I just got back from swimming practice. Come, let's do a TikTok." I didn't know Eddie had a TikTok account. We shot something stupid and uploaded it to both our accounts. Of course, we started following each other too. That night, we texted for hours. When I went to bed, I had to pinch myself really hard because I was so afraid this would turn out to be a dream. If it could hurt this much, I was most definitely not dreaming. I fell asleep, smiling from happiness. In the morning, my dad dropped me off at school again. Just then, I ran into Eddie. I used to walk around the whole school just to catch a glimpse of her, but now she started appearing right in front of me. We walked to the school, chatting. Actually, it was her who was doing the talking because I was so nervous that I couldn't think of anything to say. Eddie and I started meeting during every single break. But I couldn't even imagine that a girl like her could even remotely like someone like me. That's why I kept thinking that she only saw me as a friend. As she told me later, she had actually been waiting for me to ask her out. When she realized that I wasn't going to do it, she decided to do it herself. Of course, that hadn't occurred to me back then. So I was really surprised when one Saturday night she texted me, "Do you want to hang out tonight?" We met at a coffee shop near her house. By the end of the day, we were boyfriend and girlfriend. I was so happy I couldn't sleep that night. I'm not someone who likes to go out in the evenings. As long as I'm in school, I prefer to focus on my studies. It seems like Eddie was my total opposite. On Thursday, she texted me about a restaurant. She wrote, "Want to go to this place for dinner tomorrow? I hear it's very good." I didn't like the idea, but this was a girl that I was in love with. I had to say yes. But there was a problem. The restaurant looked super fancy. I figured it was probably expensive. When I looked at the menu online, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was a lot more expensive than I thought. I would have to save up my allowance for a year to be able to afford a place like that. Eddie didn't really show it, but it seemed that her family was very rich and they were used to going to places like this. The next day at school, Eddie asked, "So, what do you think of the restaurant?" I follow that place on Instagram. It's a celebrity hangout. I said sheepishly, "I don't feel comfortable in such places. Can't we just go to that coffee shop near you?" Eddie was disappointed. "For real? But I really want to go to this place. I've never been to such a chic restaurant. Don't I deserve to go to such places?" she said, staring at me. I was confused. Eddie was saying that normally she wouldn't be able to go to such a place. But at the same time, she thought that I could afford to take her there. So I said, "Babe, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I think eating at such a fancy restaurant would probably cost as much as my dad makes in a month. There's no way I can afford that. Eddie got really mad and yelled, "Ezra, your family is so rich. Why are you lying to me?" When I said, "What makes you think that?" she said, "Because you have a driver that drops you off at school every day, because your car is worth a fortune, because you only wear designer clothes. You think I can't tell that your family's really well off?" I said, "My dad works as a driver. The car you saw belongs to his boss. The clothes I'm wearing used to belong to the boss's son. It's actually a really sad story. I'll tell you about it sometime." Eddie began crying and suddenly screamed, "You lied to me." When I said, "Babe, you got it all wrong," she said, "Don't call me babe," and ran away. At that moment, everything became clear to me. Eddie had been thinking I was rich. She became my girlfriend because she thought she could live her dream life with me. I felt really humiliated. The love of my life was a gold digger, and she didn't even feel the need to hide it. For a few days, I was devastated. I was thinking about Eddie every waking moment. But then I figured that this wasn't the right way to go about things. Instead of being sad, I had to draw some lessons. I only fell in love with Eddie because she was beautiful. But as I learned, looks could be deceiving. I felt better when I began to think this way. The heartbreak that kept me up at night went away pretty soon. One day my dad said, "My boss is inviting us to his house. He said he had something important to tell us." We went there that evening. Mr. Kit is a wonderful person. We were having a fantastic time as we always do. Then a man came into the room. Mr. Kit said, "Let me introduce you to my attorney, Mr. Turner. He's with us today for a very important matter." The attorney took out a document and began reading. We couldn't believe our ears. My mom couldn't keep herself from crying. The document was Mr. Kit's will. Because he didn't have any other relatives, he had decided to leave half of his fortune to charity and the remaining half to me. I became incredibly rich overnight. Mr. Kit said, "This is the best decision I made in my life. Yes, I lost my son, but now I have an honorary son," and gave me a hug. I was going to receive the inheritance in the future, but Mr. Kit wanted us to have better lives right away. We moved into his house. I started going to a private school. Now I was really living the life Eddie was dreaming about. She had no idea about any of this because we had stopped talking. One day, Mr. Kit called me into his office. He said, "My company sponsored a competition. I'm supposed to present the medals to the winners, but I'm sure they're all young people like yourself. Would you like to go on my behalf?" I was really excited. Half an hour later, my dad and I were at the venue. You guessed it, right? It was a swimming competition, and Eddie was most probably there. The award ceremony had begun as I entered the hall. The presenter said, "Our sponsor is going to present the medals to the winners." I quickly walked towards them. Right next to the presenter was the podium with the top 3 finishers. When I saw that Eddie was one of them, my knees started to shake. It turned out she got second place. She was clearly surprised to see me. First, I presented the gold medal to the winner. Then I stood in front of Eddie. I smiled as I hung the silver medal around her neck. "Congratulations," I said. Eddie didn't say anything because she was completely stunned. That night, I got the message I'd been waiting for. "Hey, what's up?" I didn't write back because I didn't know how to respond. After a while, Eddie wrote, "I always knew you were lying to me." That made me upset. I replied, "I never told you a single lie in my life. I really wasn't rich back when we were dating, but then something surprising happened." Eddie wrote back, "I don't understand any of this, but I don't want to make a big deal out of it. I missed you so much. I'm sure you missed me too." Of course, I didn't reply. She must have gotten the message because she never tried to get in touch with me after that. Thanks for listening to me. If you liked my story, please don't forget to like the video. See you!